Rain murmurs against the tall windows of a Charleston mansion, hiding the sound of cruelty behind elegance. A 5-year-old boy with a metal brace on his leg grips the staircase, his breath shallow, his eyes pleading. Behind him, a soft laugh, sweet, rehearsed, turns sharp. Accidents happen, don't they? One push, a cry. A gold bracelet tumbles down the steps as thunder cracks. Moments later, headlights slice through the storm. His father's car. The front door swings open, papers in hand, and in one frozen heartbeat, he sees everything. His son lying still and the truth no one was meant to see. Charleston, South Carolina, rested under a pale gray sky that afternoon. Inside a white Federal-style house with blue shutters, the Cole family prepared for a goodbye. Michael Cole stood in the front hall, adjusting his coat collar. He was 45, tall and lean, with dark blonde hair showing faint streaks of gray. Losing his first wife 3 years ago had reshaped him completely. His 5-year-old son, Ethan, waited by the staircase with one hand gripping a crutch. His other leg was braced from knee to ankle in black carbon fiber. The accident that took his mother had left him walking slower, but thinking deeper. He rarely complained. Ranger lay stretched beside him, head resting on his paws. The 7-year-old German Shepherd had thick fur with shades of gold and charcoal, and amber eyes that never seemed to blink when danger was near. Retired from the Charleston police after an injury, around Ethan he became calm and gentle, almost sensing how much the boy depended on him. "You've got your jacket?" Michael asked. Ethan nodded. "Good man," Michael said with a small smile. "I'll only be gone for a few months. We'll talk every night, okay?" 3 months is a long time, Ethan said, unsure. From the top of the staircase, Julia Cole descended slowly. She was 34, tall and slim, with smooth olive skin and chestnut hair cut to her shoulders. Her beauty was deliberate, elegant, but sharp. "Everything packed?" she asked, her tone calm and professional. "Almost," Michael said. "Flight's in 2 hours." Julia offered a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'll keep things running here. Don't worry about us." She knelt beside Ethan, smoothing his hair with manicured fingers. "We'll be fine, won't we, sweetheart?" Ethan nodded quietly, his hand clutching Ranger's collar. The dog's tail thumped softly, a low growl humming in his chest that only the boy noticed. "Try not to let him inside too much," Julia said lightly. "He sheds on the rugs." "Ranger stays wherever Ethan is," Michael said simply. "That's non-negotiable." The horn of a black sedan sounded outside. Michael slipped into his coat. "His therapy's on Mondays and Thursdays. The contact numbers are on the fridge and Grace across the street has the spare key if you ever need anything." Michael knelt again, brushing his thumb gently across his son's cheek. "You keep practicing your steps one at a time. You promise you'll come back soon?" Ethan's voice trembled. "I promise," Michael said, hugging the boy carefully. "Be brave, my man." "I'll be brave," Ethan whispered back. Michael stood up, eyes wet. The car door shut with a heavy thud. The sedan rolled down the wet street. Julia stood on the porch, watching until it disappeared, then closed the door with a precise click. Julia turned toward him, her heels sharp against the hardwood floor. "Let's tidy up," she said, her tone clipped now, all warmth gone. Ethan knelt beside Ranger, whispering close to the dog's ear, "Don't let her take me." The first night without Michael passed slowly. By morning, the house felt different, emptier, thinner. Julia stood in the kitchen at dawn. She glanced toward the hallway where Ranger waited patiently. "You again," she muttered. "Outside." "Go." Ranger hesitated, then stepped back as she opened the door. "Out," she repeated, voice sharper. Ethan appeared moments later, limping slowly. "Can Ranger come in?" he asked. "It's cold." "He'll be fine," Julia said without looking up. "Dogs are built for the cold. You need to learn to take care of yourself." Later that morning, Julia moved through the house with a clipboard. "New rules," she said. "We'll keep things orderly while your father's away. No running, no shouting, and no leaving your room without permission after 8 o'clock." Ranger barked once from outside. Julia's jaw tightened. "And that dog will stay out during the day. He scratches the floors." By afternoon, Julia had summoned a repairman to inspect the heating vents. He arrived in a faded blue uniform, mid-40s, heavy-set with gray in his beard. His name tag read Ben Price. While Julia hovered nearby, Ethan lingered on the stairs watching. "Hi," he said quietly. Ben looked up. "Hey there, kiddo." "She's my stepmom," Ethan said, then immediately regretted it. Ben gave Ranger a nod through the glass door. "Fine-looking dog you got there." That night, Julia served dinner precisely at 6. She set the dining table for one and placed a smaller tray near the kitchen doorway for Ethan. "It's easier for cleaning," she explained without looking up. After dinner, Julia began removing framed photos from the living room shelves. Most were of Michael's late wife. "That's Mom's picture," Ethan said quietly. "Your father asked me to redecorate," Julia said. "We'll make space for new memories." "But I still want her there," he whispered. "You need to live in the present, Ethan. The past only makes people weak." Later, when the house had settled into silence, Ethan heard the metallic sound of a key turning in a lock. His door. "It's for your safety," Julia called softly. "You're still unsteady on those crutches." By the end of the second week, the house had gone almost completely silent. Julia had grown comfortable in her new role. Ranger knew at first. He would stand for long stretches near the kitchen door, muscles stiff, tail low, eyes fixed on Julia. That afternoon, Julia was in the kitchen arranging fresh flowers. Ethan sat at the small table working on a drawing. Ranger barked once from the yard. He had spotted the mailman, Hank Dillard, a man in his mid-50s with a gray beard who had worked that route for 20 years. "Hey there, soldier," Hank said through the fence, holding out a biscuit. Ranger took it gently. Inside, Julia turned to Ethan. "Pick that up," she said, pointing at a small puddle of milk he'd spilled earlier. "Quickly." Ethan reached for a rag, balancing carefully. His brace caught on the stool leg, and the crutch slipped. The bowl tipped, splashing milk across the floor. Julia froze, her jaw tightening. "I told you to be careful." "I'm sorry," he whispered. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. "Sorry doesn't fix carelessness." She knelt beside him and took the rag from his hand. Then, without warning, she gripped his wrist too hard. "You think I enjoy cleaning after you?" "I can do it," he said quickly. "Too late." She stood, throwing the rag into the sink. "You'll never learn if everything is easy." Her eyes flicked to the stairs. "Up now." He hesitated, confused. "My leg, up," she snapped, voice slicing through the air. Ethan obeyed, limping toward the staircase, clutching the railing. Each step was slow, painful. Julia followed close behind, her heels clicking sharply. "If your father saw how lazy you were, that was when it happened." His brace caught again on the edge of the stair, and he stumbled. He tried to grab the banister, but her hand shot out, not to help, but to shove. His small body lost balance and tumbled down. The sound of him hitting the steps was dull and quick, ending in a heavy thud at the bottom. For a moment, the world went still. Ethan lay motionless on the floor, one arm twisted awkwardly. Then, keys jingled. The front door opened. "Ethan." The voice was unmistakable. "Michael." Julia froze, color draining from her face. Michael stepped inside, rain still clinging to his coat. He stopped dead at the sight before him. Ethan crumpled at the base of the stairs, and Julia standing above him. "What happened?" Michael's voice was low, controlled, dangerous. He slipped," Julia stammered. Michael was already moving. He dropped his briefcase, kneeling beside his son. Ethan's eyes fluttered open. "Daddy," his voice was a thin whisper. "I'm here," Michael said, his hand trembling as he checked the boy's arm. A dark bruise was already forming. "Call an ambulance." Ranger burst through the half-open door from the yard, rushing to Ethan's side, pressing his head against the boy's chest. While Julia fumbled with the phone, Michael noticed something strange. A small red light blinking from the corner of the hall, the security camera. He walked to the small monitor on the entry table and pressed replay. The footage flashed across the screen, Ethan on the stairs, Julia behind him, and the unmistakable motion of her hand pushing. Michael's stomach dropped. "Don't you move," he said, voice low and lethal. "Not 1 inch." Minutes later, sirens began to wail. 2 paramedics entered. The woman introduced herself swiftly. "I'm Carla Hayes. Let's get him stabilized." Michael answered their questions in clipped sentences. He fell. "There's a camera. You'll see what really happened." "She's not coming," Michael said when the paramedic glanced at Julia. Outside, a patrol car had arrived. From it stepped Deputy Grace Monroe, tall, mid-30s, with auburn hair tied back. She had been Michael's neighbor once. "Michael," she said as he approached. He met her eyes. She pushed him. Grace looked past him at Julia. "We'll take it from here," she said. She motioned to another officer. "Read her rights." Michael turned away, following the stretcher to the ambulance. The rain began again. He climbed inside, Ranger settling beside his feet. "I've got you, buddy. I've got you." The doors closed, sealing them in the sterile light. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and rain. Michael sat in the waiting area, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Ranger lay stretched across his boots. It had been nearly 3 hours since the ambulance arrived. Ethan was still in the operating room. The door to the hallway opened. Dr. Samuel Green stepped out, removing his surgical mask. He was in his early 50s, tall with silver hair cropped close. "Mr. Cole," he said, voice steady but soft. Michael stood. "How is he?" "He's stable. The fall fractured his left arm and caused a mild concussion. There's some bruising on the ribs, but no internal bleeding." "He was lucky." "Lucky," Michael repeated. "He'll need rest, therapy, and to be watched closely. But he's strong. He'll recover." The doctor paused. "This wasn't an accident, was it?" Michael's jaw flexed. "No." Dr. Green nodded slowly. "We've placed him in room 304. You can see him now." Michael murmured his thanks and turned toward the hall. Ranger rose silently and followed. Ethan looked small in the hospital bed, pale against the white sheets. His arm was in a cast, his head wrapped with a thin band of gauze. Michael pulled up a chair and sat close. "Hey, buddy," he whispered. "You're safe now." When Ethan stirred, his eyes fluttered open. "Dad." "Right here," Michael said. "Don't try to move." Ethan's lips parted. "She pushed me." Michael swallowed hard. "I know. I saw. Is Ranger okay?" "He's fine," Michael said. "He stayed with you the whole time." Ethan tried to smile back, then drifted back to sleep. Around midnight, Deputy Grace Monroe appeared at the door. "I thought you might still be here," she said quietly. "Mind if I come in?" "Please," Michael gestured. Grace was in her late 30s, tall and athletic. "She's in custody," Grace said. "Your wife, she's being charged with assault and reckless endangerment." Once we reviewed the footage, there wasn't much left to argue. Michael's gaze stayed on his son. "She tried to say it was an accident." "She did," Grace replied. "Then she changed her story twice more. The detectives will finish the paperwork in the morning. I'll make sure the restraining order is processed." Michael nodded but said nothing. Grace softened her tone. I know this isn't easy, but you did the right thing, Michael. Getting home when you did, that probably saved him. If I hadn't forgotten that file, I might not have come back at all. Then maybe you were meant to, she said simply. A nurse entered quietly, adjusting Ethan's fore. You don't see loyalty like that every day, she said softly, glancing at Ranger. Hospital policy says no animals, but I think we can make an exception tonight. Thank you, Michael said. Grace rose. I'll check in tomorrow, she said. Get some rest if you can. After she left, the room felt smaller but quieter. Michael leaned back in the chair, exhaustion weighing on him. Ranger lifted his head, ears perked toward the window, then softened as he laid his head back down. Michael finally closed his eyes. In the half-sleep that followed, he dreamed of the house, the open door, the flashing lights. But in the dream, he wasn't helpless. He stood at the base of the stairs, holding Ethan safely in his arms. When Michael woke, the first light of morning was spreading across the horizon. The rain had stopped completely. Ethan still slept soundly, his face peaceful. Michael stood, stretching stiffly, and pulled the curtain open. The city was waking. He whispered, "We start over, son. From here." Behind him, the heart monitor kept its steady rhythm. 2 weeks later, the Cole family's new home sat at the edge of Folly Beach, a modest 2-story cottage with white shutters and a wide porch overlooking the dunes. Sunlight spilled through every window, filling each corner with warmth. Ethan stood by the porch rail, his crutch leaning beside him. His cast had been replaced with a removable brace. The boy's face had color again as he watched Ranger chase the waves below. Michael was on the porch steps, hammer in hand, hanging a small wooden sign he had carved himself, "The Lighthouse House." Beneath the letters, he had etched 3 silhouettes, a man, a boy, and a dog. From inside came the faint voice of Helen Ward, the hospital social worker. "He's doing well," she said. "The environment matters more than people realize. Open air, sunlight, stability." Michael smiled faintly. "He sleeps better here. No more nightmares." "That's good to hear." Helen turned her gaze toward Ethan on the porch. "He's resilient." Outside, Ethan was calling for Ranger. "Come back," he shouted, laughter breaking through his words. Helen gathered her things. "I'll stop by again in a few weeks," she said. "The local community center has art programs for children with disabilities. Might be good for him." After she left, Michael stepped onto the porch beside Ethan. "What do you think of the name?" he asked, pointing at the sign. Ethan tilted his head. "The Lighthouse House? Why?" "Because light belongs here now," Michael said. That afternoon, the 3 of them walked along the beach. The tide was low, revealing ridges of seashells and driftwood. Halfway down the shore, they met Caleb O'Donnell, a middle-aged carpenter who owned the small workshop nearby. "Afternoon," he greeted. "You must be the folks who bought the old Harper place." "That's us," Michael replied. "Michael Cole. This is my son, Ethan." Caleb nodded to the boy. "Welcome, young man. You settling in all right?" Ethan smiled shyly. "Yes, sir. My dog loves the beach." Caleb laughed. "Can't blame him." He crouched down and extended a hand to Ranger. "Fine shepherd you've got here." They chatted for a while. Michael learned that Caleb had lost his own son in a boating accident years back. Since then, he'd become something of a local helper. Before leaving, he offered, "If you ever need work done around the house, just holler." That evening, the smell of grilled fish filled the kitchen. Michael cooked while Ethan drew at the table, a sketch of the sea, Ranger, and a tall lighthouse shining over them all. "Dad," he said after a moment. "When Mom was alive, did she like the ocean?" Michael paused. "She did," he said quietly. "She used to say the ocean reminded her of hope. No matter how far you go, there's always a horizon waiting." Ethan thought about that, then added a small figure of a woman in the drawing, standing beside the lighthouse. Then she can be part of it, too. After dinner, the two sat on the porch with mugs of hot cocoa. Ranger lay at their feet. The stars were beginning to appear. Michael glanced down at Ethan, who was leaning against him. "You know," he said softly. "I used to think happiness was something you had to earn. Turns out it's just something you protect." Ethan yawned. "Like Ranger protects me." "Exactly like that." Later that night, Michael stood by Ethan's door, watching him sleep. On the bedside table sat Ethan's drawing, the lighthouse, the family, and Ranger under a bright sun that he stepped out to the porch where the moonlight stretched across the sand like silver dust. Ranger stood alert near the railing. Whatever ghosts lingered from Charleston, they seemed far away now. Inside, the small wooden sign above the door caught the moonlight. The Lighthouse House. For the first time, the word home felt real again. The first real storm of the season rolled in from the Atlantic without warning. Dark clouds pressed low over the sea. The wind began to hum through the dunes. Michael stood by the window, watching the sky churn. Ranger paced near the door, uneasy. "Dad, is it bad?" Ethan asked from the couch. "Not yet," Michael replied. "But we'll keep an eye on it." By afternoon, the rain had grown heavier. The wind rattled the shutters. Later that evening, a knock came at the door. When Michael opened it, Caleb O'Donnell stood there, drenched to the bone. "Evening," he said, breathless. "My truck got stuck in the sand near the inlet. Phone signal's dead and the tide's coming in fast." "Come in," Michael said immediately. They spent the next hour sharing coffee while the storm howled outside. As night deepened, the power went out completely. An hour later, a loud crash shook the back of the house. A window had blown open. They wrestled it shut, working to secure the remaining windows. When they finally retreated upstairs, Ethan sat wrapped in a blanket. Ranger pressed close beside him. "Is it always like this?" the boy asked. "Not always," Caleb said. "But storms like to remind us who's really in charge." They spent the night listening to the storm beat against the walls. Between the thunder, Caleb spoke quietly about his late son. "That's why I fix houses now," he said. "You can't save everyone, but you can keep the next roof from caving in." By dawn, the storm began to ease. Faint sunlight peeked through the clouds. The yard was scattered with debris, but the house stood firm. Ethan was the first to step outside. The beach was transformed, but the air was clean, bright, alive. Caleb came out behind them. "Looks like she held up fine," he said proudly. "We owe you one," Michael said. "Just keep it standing," Caleb replied. "That's thanks enough." Ethan leaned against the railing. "It's like the storm washed everything new again," he said. Michael rested a hand on his shoulder. "That's how life works, kiddo. The worst storms leave room for light to come back." Ranger barked once, loud and bright, chasing a seagull. The sound echoed through the salt air, a joyful, fearless noise that seemed to promise better days. A week after the storm, Folly Beach had settled back into its rhythm. Michael worked on repainting the porch rail. Ethan sat on the steps with Ranger stretched beside him. The dog had a new collar with a small silver tag that read Ranger Cole. "Dad," Ethan said, holding up a sketchbook. "Look." The page showed their house on the hill with a lighthouse in the distance. But this time there was a small group of people standing together. Himself, Ethan, Ranger, and a tall man holding a toolbox. "That Caleb?" Michael asked, smiling. Ethan nodded. "He said he's coming later to help fix the dock. He's good at keeping promises." As if summoned, Caleb's old pickup truck appeared. They spent the next few hours repairing the dock. When they finished, it stretched proudly into the shallow waves. Ethan clapped from the shore. "It looks new," he shouted. As the sun began to set, Helen Ward's car pulled up. She stepped out in a light linen dress. "You've been busy," she said. The place looks like a postcard now. She approached Ethan, crouching beside him. How's my favorite artist? I finished the lighthouse picture, he said, holding it up proudly. She admired it, eyes softening. That's beautiful, Ethan. I came to tell you that the case is closed, Helen said. Julia accepted a plea deal. She'll serve time, but won't be able to contact either of you again. You can move forward now. Michael nodded. Thank you, he said simply. As the evening deepened, Helen joined them for dinner on the porch. Caleb returned briefly, bringing fresh-caught fish as a gift. The small group shared a meal as the waves whispered in the background. After dinner, Helen helped Ethan light a lantern and place it by the porch railing. What's it for? Ethan asked. Helen smiled. For whatever you want to remember. The boy thought for a moment, then whispered, for Mom. The three adults stood quietly as the lantern glowed brighter. Ranger sat beside Ethan, eyes fixed on the horizon. Later that night, when the house was quiet again, Michael stepped outside one last time. The moon hung low over the ocean. Ranger followed, sitting beside him. You did good, boy, Michael murmured, scratching behind his ears. You kept us all together. From the upstairs window, Michael saw Ethan sleeping soundly. On the page was a final drawing, their house beneath the lighthouse beam with the words scrolled in a child's uneven hand. We stayed in the light. Michael closed the window gently and whispered into the quiet, yes, we did. Outside, the lantern still burned, steady and golden, long after the night had settled in. Sometimes miracles don't come with thunder or angels. They come quietly through a child's courage, a loyal dog's bark, or a moment when truth finally shines through the darkness.